Hey, I was writing a lot of long texts and emails to various people, and I thought it would be appropriate for me to maybe like read one of them or kind of go over them on the video because I don't want, since there's no really context or tone in emails and videos, I wanted to be sure that the recipients, could see that I am of a sober, insane mind, even though I could understandably be freaking out over the things that have happened to me. And I want I think it's just easier if I do it in a video and then link it in the email and text messages, even if I still write them all lengthy. And so you can see, like, I'm not a paranoid, delusional, psychotic that's gone crazy. And even if I was one of those people, they don't deserve their human rights or civil liberties to be violated like I have. Important point is kind of when you have had your basic human rights violated and your civil liberties violated, it's kind of hard to complain about that to people, even calmly, without you. I guess if they were, you should be more outraged. You should be acting out more outraged and more panicked or more crazy or angry. But then if you do, then you seem more like a crazy, delusional person. So it's like a catch-22, and it's a tough situation to be in. This was, I sent my dad, Kerry Lacron, and my friend Tom Denton, and my ex-roommate, Tim Cunningham, and I will be sending something to Alan Stewart, my ex-landlord/roommate. Something about my disappointment in an incident that happened a couple weeks ago, in which I was ripped out of my bed by Manor Police Department for no reason, and detained for 72 hours on a protective order emergency detention thing, in which I had never been interviewed to even make that determination, although I kept saying I was not thinking of hurting myself or anybody else, nor was I acting like a crazy psychotic person that was a threat to anyone or anyone else. I was in my bed, cowering in the corner from the police, and nor was I acting in any way with my roommate or landlord that required any action on their part at all. My roommate said, well, I think you were being loud in your room, or you're talking to yourself loud in your room, perhaps, and which the landlord had only been able to hear when he was, any inkling thereof, when he was in the kitchen, not from his bedroom, which even then shouldn't have bothered him. But, he had voiced that concern that I was being loud or something like that, or talking to myself loud or something like that. And I shut up. I said, I'm just going to go to bed. I'll be quiet. When you're by yourself all the time, you do end up talking to yourself. And with this crap going on, without it being addressed, you think of it over and over. You go over it and over it again, frustrated and talking about, nothing's being done. No one's doing the right thing. This thing happened. Even when I talk to Tim on cigarette breaks on the porch, I get tired of it myself. I say the same things over and over and over because the same things happen over and over. No one does anything about it, and they keep happening. But in the incident, and this email was also sparked by an email to Rainey Fraser of AIDS Services of Austin, and I'm asking for her help with continuing to be a client there for the food bank and for the new clinic that's next door to them, and or with help with David Powell. I believe I'm back on MAP due to this incident. I was applied for, and I believe I got coverage for MAP. I don't have the other coverages, like the Ryan White or whatever, or the community care coverage yet, since it was done through the Shoal Creek location with the caseworker there. I have a gap from ADEP coverage since December that I had an appointment for and couldn't make, and had called for a reschedule and for help on that, and have not received a call back from David Powell. So Rainey, I could use your help on contacting them. But the incident that sort of delayed me by 3 weeks on this. As I said, like my landlord had told my roommate that he had heard me from the kitchen talking to myself loudly or yelling. I wasn't yelling, but he heard me talking to myself loudly, allegedly. When he had voiced that with me, I told him I'm going to go to bed. I just don't worry about it. Whatever. I'm going to go to bed, and I shut the fuck up. There wasn't an incident that was happening. Apparently that wasn't good enough, and he called the police. When they responded, I had already been in my bedroom. I typically lock my door because Tim has a bad habit of just opening the door. Not that I'm doing anything in there, but just I feel like a privacy respect there, sort of, to some degree. So I just, it's a habit. I just lock the door, and it's never been an issue. And it's my right to do that. It's in my bedroom. If I don't want people opening the doors and coming in there, I certainly have the right to lock it. And it's just a habit anyway. I did that even when I was in high school. When I shared the house with my parents, I even did that. But I was trying to go to sleep in there with my dog Max, and I was quiet. And then all of a sudden, I hear that the police are here, and I'm just fed up because of all these previous incidences that happened. I was shocked that Alan even called the police. There was no need to call the police. There wasn't an incident that was happening. I wasn't doing anything wrong. He had voiced concern for me talking loudly in my room, which he was only able to hear an inkling of from the kitchen, which is very close to, closer to my room. He could not hear it from his bedroom. And it should not have been anything that really bothered him anyway. Tim's TV has often been much louder than that, much louder than that. And I don't see him banging on Tim's room or taking a hammer to his door, calling the police on that, or even mentioning it to him. But apparently this was worth mentioning to me. And even though I was trying to get to sleep in my bed, perfectly quiet, when the police arrived, I basically told them, I'm not thinking about hurting myself or anybody else. I don't need assistance with anything. Except for that, I want to be left alone. Please let me go to sleep. I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't need any help. I'm not crazy. I repeated that I wasn't thinking about hurting myself or anybody else, and that I just wanted to be left alone. I had heard the police come around to the window to see if they could look in, through the bushes in the front. I thought they were going to come into the window. That kind of bothered me, but they didn't. And they let me go. They left. They responded appropriately, which was, he doesn't seem to be in danger, or he doesn't seem to be endangering anyone else. This isn't really a call for us to respond to or take any further action on. We've asked if he needed assistance or if he wanted to talk to us. He said no. He indicated he was not a threat to himself or anybody else. Blah, blah, blah. They left. Appropriately so. They shouldn't have ever been called. Alan probably should have been arrested or given a ticket for filing a false police report. Well, after the police left, I stayed in my room. I was going to try to go to bed again. I was still in my bed, actually lying in my bed. And then I thought I heard Tim leave the house, but I guess I thought he had left the house. I thought I heard him open his door and then leave. And then I had heard a speaker, or I heard music blasting right outside my door. And Tim and my door are right next to each other. Alan's is in the back of the house, further away. So I thought maybe Tim had probably turned on music loudly, maybe to just, distract from the situation and be I don't really know I just assumed it was him because he was right there. And I opened the door and there was a Bluetooth speaker on the ground. I immediately turned it off because I thought that would have bothered Alan, because it was much louder than I was being even earlier in my room when I was talking loudly to myself. I wasn't screaming or anything even earlier then. I still dispute that. Certainly not in any way that would seem to cause any panic for anyone. And it could have been like my TV, even though it wasn't loud at all. But this was way louder than I have ever been in my bedroom, even when talking to myself, or even when I'm in pain, when I'm getting the zaps or getting those electrical shocks, even from crying out in pain on that or in frustration. The few times when it sometimes builds up, every week or sometimes it goes, 2 or 3 weeks without me crying out in pain or frustration from the pain that I'm experiencing at times 24/7. And then I've told Alan, there's going to be times where I'm talking to myself. There's going to be times where I'm frustrated at the pain and I cry out in pain. One time he told me to suffer in silence because I was crying out in pain in the restroom in frustration from the pain. And I did yell at him then, but that was like a week or two before this. But I was very disappointed in his suffer in silence thing. I do suffer in silence. I suffer in silence 24/7, 99% of the time. Every now and then, every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, sometimes I voice my frustration to them, usually when Alan isn't there, and certainly where he can't hear it from his bedroom. And in any case, certainly isn't something to call the police about, which is extremely frustrating. But he then took, when I turned off the speaker, I returned to my room. And then I heard it out of the corner of my eyes. I had seen Alan come from his bedroom as I was going to my door, and I closed it. And he's like, "Give me back my Bluetooth speaker," or "Don't take my," something like that. It's like, "Give me back my Bluetooth speaker." I think he thought that I turned it off and took it into my room. He assumed that wrongfully. I just turned it off, and I did move it closer to Tim's door because I didn't want someone to. There's a bathroom door there, and I didn't want to kick it. If I had chosen to go to the restroom or go to the kitchen for a drink or something, I just moved it closer to his closed door, thinking it was him for some reason turning it on, or maybe trying to distract from the situation, or I don't know. I thought it was a bad idea, and I thought it would bother Alan, since he was bothered by a much lower level of volume coming from my door that he was not able to hear from his bedroom, but able to hear an inkling from his kitchen, or when he was standing right outside my bedroom door to make a fuss over it. And wasn't anything to ever call the police or even be upset about to begin with. But for some reason he had taken issue with like, I guess, anything coming from my room, which has been at a lower volume of stuff coming from Tim's room at times. And anyway, I don't want to get into that, but he was seemed extremely panicked, and he said, "Give me back my Bluetooth speaker." I had opened my bedroom door, and I was like, "Tim, Alan, it's right there." And I could have the order of events wrong about this. This might have happened after the hammer incident. I think this happened after the hammer incident. So I think I'm telling you, I think I glossed over the most important thing that happened. But I turned it off, or maybe I could have this right. I can't remember the order of events that easily here because it was all so quick. But I said I had opened the door, and Alan's like right there staring me at the face. I'm like, "Alan's right there." Like, "Alan, what are you like?" "Alan, I don't have it, and even if I had it, like, I would give it back to you, but I didn't. I thought it was Tim. I thought it would bother you." And so I closed the door and went to bed, sat in the bed, and I was going to get back in bed with my dog. Very quickly, there's a hammer, or Alan said, "I'm getting the hammer." And I was like, "What is he talking about?" Alan comes back and starts hammering on my door, my bedroom door. Again, this is after the first police left, because there was nothing to respond to, and I was being quiet. I was being dead quiet. My TV was not, it was on, but it was doing like the Chromecast slideshow. There's no volume coming from it. I wasn't playing anything to it. It might have been actually entirely off. There's no sound coming from my bedroom at all. I'm doing nothing wrong in my bedroom except lying in bed with my dog. My dog runs under the bed and hides. Appropriately so. I felt so bad for him. He punches a hole through my door with a hammer, reaches inside and unlocks my door. That's against the law to do. He's basically committing domestic violence at this point, or certainly in the step in that direction, and still breaking the law. You're not allowed to do that. And then he instructed Tim to take the handle off my door, and Tim was crouched down and got some tools and immediately took the handle off my door. He almost seemed prepared to do so, and he keeps getting defensive at this because I said I would never do that to you, and Tim said I was afraid that I might get kicked out. He says that now, but again, even if that's the case, I still wouldn't do that out of fear for being kicked out. I would say no, I'm not going to commit illegal action that's perpetuated by that after you commit domestic violence for no reason against someone. I would have stood up to that. And I don't want Tim to get defensive about that. Tim, if you're watching this, what I want you to do is you should apologize for that. You don't even have to apologize verbally, but you should know that you shouldn't have done that. And I understand your reasoning behind that now. It's still not it still doesn't excuse it. And it doesn't mean I understand it. I empathize with that, but I'm homeless now. Like I literally was for 12 hours, like at my storage unit, or maybe not 12 hours, but like for several hours at my storage unit, freezing my balls off in just amount of a square inch of space for the door to open, and sitting there arguing with my dad about trying to get in a hotel room because I was homeless after being detained for 2 weeks for doing nothing wrong. You should be, I mean, everyone should be outraged at this. And I'm outraged that they're not outraged at this. Alan, I did nothing wrong. The most I did that day was talk to myself loudly over this nonsense that's been happening that could make anyone go crazy or frustrated in the sense of like nothing's happening. When you're wronged for one time, it's obvious. You typically will go around, you play it over and over and over again in your head or out loud because no one did the right thing and it frustrates you. I'm tired of doing that. I'm tired of talking over with Tim like my frustrations, that like the same shit's, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. My life sucks. My life has been ruined by other people, and other people are allowing that to continue to happen or allow that to go unresponded to. And that's not acceptable, but then I have to accept it. And I'm just trying to live day by day, usually suffering, with with no one doing anything about it, what's happened. And then this shit happens again. And it's so outlandish and so outrageous about what continued to happen. And I guess I'll continue that story there, where so he's only the door. So then the police are called again, not by me. I was just in shock. And when Tim did that, I was like, Tim, I can't even look at you in the face anymore. I can't believe you're participating in this. I can't believe you're doing this. And he said something like, Kip, you brought this upon yourself, or something like that. And I'm like, what is he talking about this? I brought this upon myself. I did not bring this upon myself. And this is not justified by anything. There's nothing that I did that even could, there's nothing I did to even overly respond that way to. I wasn't threatening anyone. I wasn't threatening myself. I've never been suicidal. I've actually been very expressive in stating that I don't really believe in an afterlife or whatever. So not existing anymore is very undesirable for me. So even though I went through a suffering in which other people may have committed suicide or hurt themselves or thought about it, understandably so. And I've expressed that explicitly because a lot of things I went through, it's because those people intend for people to hurt other people and or themselves. And that's their goal as gangstalking. Gangstalkers often or can get into, or it's something that is a goal of theirs for fun, which is heinous and just like disgusting and totally something that people don't get. And I'm like, I know. I don't get it either, in the sense of I would never do that to a single person ever. I would never bother someone like that for 1 minute, let alone for a day or a month or years. Or like, who has that kind of time? Well, that's, a new thing that's happening, gang stalking. And it's also very hard to tell the difference between someone's story of gang stalking and whether or not they're mentally ill, because they prey on mentally ill. They prey on isolated people. They prey on people using drugs recreationally or otherwise. And they try to drive people to be further addicted to drugs or further using drugs, or to plant drugs on them, or to further their mental illness, or to create an appearance of mental illness. And if I do have a mental illness, it would be maybe PTSD from all this stuff. But I think I've, aside from some earlier instances, 2 years ago, in which I did freak out, understandably so, under the situation, I'm pretty well adjusted. I'm a sober, insane person. And my dad doesn't believe that that's the case. But the police responded, and all of a sudden I had 4 officers. I'm in bed, and there's 4 officers in there. Obviously, they can come in now because there's no lock on my door or doorknob. And they still didn't ask to come in. They just came in. And then a 5th officer came in. So I had my bed's pushed in the corner because it's a really tiny room. So I have like, let me see, like there's 3 officers here and then 2 officers on the end of my bed. So it's basically like they're surrounding the bed entirely. And I kept repeating to myself, I'm not thinking of hurting myself or anybody else. I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm not a threat to myself or anybody else. I kept repeating that over and over and over. So I was like, I do not wish to go with you. I don't need to go with you. I did nothing wrong. I'm not committing a crime. I just want to be left alone and I want to go to sleep. And I was like, I do not want to go with you. I don't feel safe with you. There's no reason for that. I was like, you need to arrest them. I'd actually asked them to arrest Alan and Tim for their actions in taking a hammer to my door and taking the doorknob off. At least Alan. And I paused with Tim though, because I didn't want to get Tim in trouble. I didn't want I didn't want them to like plant drugs on him, or, I know that he's had a concern with the police. I think that's why he didn't come into the hallway to talk with them about it, because he's been scared of the police since they arrested him last time from the second incident ago, when they were there to drop my dog off and not me. And should not have run a background check on him, but they did anyway, knowing, and which I had threats of. And anyway, they had told me that they were going to arrest Tim before they arrested Tim in the days prior. The police that had been bothering me before. They had told me that they were going to get Tim arrested in an incident, and then they did. In a way that was like, you wouldn't really necessarily follow up on, but an officer there to drop off a dog would not run a roommate's name to see if he had anything. That's not something they would typically do. That was something that was not. It was slightly abnormal, but it's not something you could really complain about and follow up on, because, well, he did have a warrant out for his arrest, but then he took care of it, got dismissed. But he was in jail for like a month or a few weeks. But no one's following up on the fact that was a warning. I was threatened that they would arrest him. And then they did in the incident last time. I'll do another video about that, which was a bad arrest too, and there's footage of that needs to be pulled. So at one point, the second officer from the left, the blonde Caucasian officer, I was like in the car. I was in the corner, like I don't, with my blanket, like, I do not want to go with you. I did nothing wrong. He punched a hole in the door and took the doorknob off. And I started to say my roommate, and they were like, your roommate did what? And I didn't. I was like, he had the doorknob taken off, and he punched a hole in the door, which some of them had seen coming in, and which at least two of them had glanced over and seen, again, the evidence thereof. They did not ask him any questions about that. They did not go and even talk to them. I said, why aren't you talking to him about putting a hole in the door? I didn't do anything wrong. They didn't even tell me why they were there. They didn't tell me that. They didn't tell me why they wanted me to come with them. Then he pointed a taser at me. I'm less than 3 feet away from this officer, and he has the nerve to literally unholster his taser gun and point it at me, almost like at my face. Like, I was like, where's it going to hit me? Is it going to hit me like here in my face? Like, where's he? Like, he's going to taser me? Like they did like they did in that one incident back in September of, or not September, in November. Right. When did they taser me? November of 2006. November 2000. A few days after Thanksgiving in 2017. They did that, right? Or no, 2016. They did that. Yeah. Shortly after the Day of Fear or whatever. Yeah, they did that. Without any probable cause either. But this time, and I didn't know it was going to happen either. And then they charged me with resisting back then. Well, I think he thought it was a ridiculous thing, because I was like, really, you're going to taser me? Like, I'm right here, 5 of you, and you're just going to outright taser me as I'm cowering in fear from you, from 5 officers. You're going to do that, and you're going to write in a report that it was necessary to tase me when responding to nothing that I was doing. When I've already told you I'm not thinking about hurting myself or anybody else. That guy just took a hammer to my door and took the doorknob off for no reason. Arrest him or talk to him. Please leave me alone. I did nothing wrong, without telling me why. And then he finally holstered that, and then immediately, like, all 5 of them reached for me. I'm like, and they turned me over. And as they handcuffed me, one of the officers pressed hard and did a little too tightly, and then also pressed hard that made me cry out in pain a little bit. And I'm mentioning that because in the last incident, I kind of think that this always makes me feel like this was set up and framed in a way where, like, it was done in a way, and this whole nonsense, it makes me left to believe like it's kind of like a what would you do moment that's going to be looked at in retrospect, which it could be used for that anyway. But the bad people sometimes make me think that the good people are doing this, or that they're setting me up in order to be saved or rescued later by showing the bad behavior of the police, sheriff's department, and the mental or the healthcare staff that follows. Because you could look at every single bit of this. Hopefully, it was recorded in secret, but probably not, because I don't want to be paranoid. But it could have been, and certainly with the chest, cameras, that they have those, they could, or the microphones, they could certainly pull those, and even the reports. I know that none of this happened correctly. I'm a sober, insane person that was ripped out of bed for no reason. That was a bad response. And the further healthcare staff could be followed up with. I guess I'll do a separate video about that, and looked at for and looked into for that. And it could be, well, what would you do in a moment? And it seems like it was because of the way Tim and Alan were acting. It made me think that was what was going to be happening. But I was like, this doesn't, like, there's been so many of that with me, and some in this Gangstalking bullshit. Even with people that weren't involved and were just responding and still behaving badly, or naively. Things need to change anyway, and there needs to be a study of this anyway, because there are so many badly behaving people and wrongfully behaving people, and people that were behaving kind of in ways that they might normally behave anyway. But it's like, why would you treat someone like that? If you think you were helping them, look at this. You were not helping them. Even if that person was slightly crazy, which I'm not, or even if they were crazy, does that look like you were helping them? Or are you helping them into a better situation? How does ripping them out of their bed help them feel anything other than their basic human rights being violated, which they were, and when their civil liberties being violated, which they were? How does that make them feel better? How does that help their mental state? I wasn't thinking about hurting myself or anybody else, which is a question that should be considered for assault victims and for people going through something that other people are causing them harm. When you ask them that, they probably want to hurt, or they want people to hurt the people hurting them, right? So that's a question when they answer no to. They're really answering no to it because they don't want to be put in a padded cell or something like that. That's a question that's really not the best question to answer. And even if they are thinking of hurting themselves or someone else, the padded cell, which I didn't get put into this time, but I got a whole lot of other things happen. 99% of the people that get put in a padded cell don't need to be put in a padded cell in downtown Central Booking and Travis County Correctional Complex, and probably if Manor Police Department has those things, probably those as well. Because unless they're going to bang their head against the wall, cells in jail cells and in hospital places, typically you're not given anything to hang yourself. A lot of times you're left naked there anyway with a blanket or a Velcro thing that looks like a mini skirt that is even smaller than a blanket, and you're still left, very cold and chilly in it. You can't hurt yourselves anyway unless you're going to bang your head against the wall, right? And which you would have to be really, really fucked up and crazy to do that. And even in those cases, the little toilet that's a grate in the floor, you could do that against the grate in the floor, technically speaking, even though it's not as hard as a concrete wall. So, but if someone's suicidal, if you just put them in a cell and don't give them the ability to do that, or monitor them more closely, or just give them someone to talk to or help, and not put them in there to begin with, or at least talk to them, you don't need to put people locked in a padded cell. That actually makes the situation much worse for their mental health. I've been put in a padded cell. Not one single time did I need to be put in a padded cell. Not one single time did I answer that I was suicidal or thinking of hurting anybody else. Nor was I acting in any way that could have thought that I should have been put in there. And sometimes, and a lot of times they do it to be assholes. One time I was behaving perfect. I was on my best behavior. Again, I never had a criminal record before this. I was on my best behavior some previous times. I made sure that I answered, no, I'm fine. No, I'm not thinking of doing that. I'm perfectly fine. Even though I wanted someone to come and find these people and do the worst to them, after getting the information out on other victims and other people, even though I want them to have a fate worse than death, which I don't really, I wanted them to cooperate in full and us to all have the best outcome possible and for them to be considered, whistleblowers and this stuff. I really didn't want the worst for them. But then over 2 years, it's like, yeah, you want them to get a fate worse. They want to get a fate worse than death, right? Because they knowingly say that. They knowingly joke that, mocking fate, saying, joking. They come up with scenarios, verbal, scenarios in which they do get busted by their family and by the public and whatever, which is so stupid, because it's like they escalate it to a point where they do get their comeuppance. They do get this, and in the most poetically and poetic justice, but in ways that would be considered poetic justice, and the people cheer if it happened in a movie, or on a radio show, over and over and over again, and escalate to the point where it's like they are making fun of themselves. They are literally lecturing themselves as themselves. And then pretend to be people and pretend to act out the fact that they knowingly are doing this to fake me out, or in the sense of to think that I think it's over, or it's about to be over, because it sounds like you're about to be busted, or that you are being busted, and then it never is, and they joke about that. But then they escalate to a point of don't you think someone would ever be like, oh, no, that's not right, you guys deserve that? So you take it to the point where they don't even recognize the fact that it's escalated to such a ridiculous nature that it is happening, or it is about to happen. And then they make fun of themselves and about being such horrible people, and about being such stupid people that they would even do such a thing to begin with. Again, with me saying, or with them acting my part out, and me even saying and agreeing with them, you're not faking me out. Maybe you are. Even if you were, who cares? That's not me being a bad person. I'm ashamed of you guys. I'm not ashamed, although there is the feeling of being scammed or being fooled. There's a little bit of that feeling of oh, you got me, yeah, I guess I am a fool for thinking better of people, or hoping better of people, instead of thinking the worst of people and being a paranoid psychotic. So it's interesting to see that they can do these things and act out these scenarios in verbal ways, or whatever, and or a voice to skull or whatever, which is a technology that's been around again for over 60 years and was perfected or improved to the point of being able to have voice transmissions over 50 years ago. There's well documentation of that. It's not a conspiracy theory. Although if you do look up voice to skull and gangstalking, you will get a lot of conspiracy, crazy written websites, because it is easily latched onto by paranoid people. But then the other scary thing is, technically speaking, you don't know that they're not crazy. And if they are crazy, they still attack crazy people, making them crazier, or they made those people crazy. I mean, if you are involved with a conspiracy or people against you for no reason, and with gangstalking, they don't know the person. They just go around looking for people, and they pick one at random, or that looks interesting, or that they find interesting, or they want to do something to. They don't have financial motive. They don't have a personal vendetta against them. They don't know the person. The person doesn't know them. And then they attack them, from afar. They harass them from afar. And this is done in a way with things that have been around for over 50 or 60 years, or recent things that are riot control or crowd control devices, and or devices used, to attack or debilitate people from afar. They joked in an episode over a year ago in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They used a device to bring one of the fellow officers to their knees, jokingly. They were like, they use a sonic or microwave or I don't know, whatever. And he was like, and he fell to his knees. And I'm like, there's police video of me falling to my knees while they're doing that to me from wherever. And I've experienced that. I experience electroshocks daily. Excuse me. So it's so well known now that they're joking about it in a 30-minute police comedy on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or parodying the situation. That those devices have existed for years. Either self-contained, like she was holding on to something like this, so it was like in a thing on a stand like that. But they have them in drones, and they have them in handheld devices. So they're not even that big. They're not necessarily that big. They don't have to be that big. And so those devices exist, and my dad doesn't believe me, and Tom doesn't believe me, or I believe that you believe it. And so everything I'm describing is real, and can be done with technology that's been around for several years, up to over 50 years. And and has been demonstrated. Magicians and mentalists used voice to skull to pretend to pick numbers from people's brains, or like in America's Got Talent situation, they used it. And I hope he would admit to this. And if word gets out to any magician or mentalist or association thereof, please come out and talk about this, because it's like, it's the secret's over. And this isn't a secret. It's just that you guys have used these things, just to do quick tricks. And you really need to come out and demonstrate that this can be used to do this, and also to manipulate the words that come out of people's mouths, because you sort of subliminally put them in there. I think voice of skull can be used for that as well. And I really wish that whoever has these, that are using it for benevolent, tricks, and not using it to harass people or manipulate people. It can be used subliminally or not so subliminally, and trap people on a schizophrenic radio station or stations. Imagine that over 2 years that, someone is on there with someone bothering them all day long, or someone shocking them. It's like it's a kid like poking you over and over and over again all day long. And within a few hours or a few minutes, you're going to yell at that person, but they're right there and you could control the situation. People are you can hold them accountable. With no accountability and without being able to go after these people, they try to blame it on we're at the neighbors. They try to make it seem like the neighbor's doing that, or that the person across the street's doing that, or that Alan's involved with it. And it's like, I'm not a paranoid person. I don't think the worst of people. I did go through a paranoid time where I thought my sister knows something or my dad knows something, thinking that it was like turning into some sort of reality show that like was investigating the situation, and that now they know about it, and now like they're kind of making it obvious that it's sort of like, hey, and they made it seem like people are giving me hints. That's why I did that Toby Tucker Social Security Administration thing in the letter. No one, I'll do another video for that, but my name would never be changed on the form letter. That letter is imported from a database. My last name is not Legrone or Lacrone, and I've gotten 2 letters since then. That indicates that someone manually manipulated that letter. It sounds paranoid, but again, no one would ever do that. That would simply be a form letter that would actually automatically go out, or that they would pull up on a tickler. They have the capability, obviously, to halt in a step and go in there and edit the name, or edit the letter, or add more details if they need to, in like one-off situations or ones that they need to add more detail or do some sort of manual manipulation. They would never actually hand type "Dear Kerry Lagrone Jr." ever. It's automatically input them for me. They have the capability of doing that after the fact, before it's printed, or even after it's printed, or they reprint it, and that's what happened. And that indicates something that, and the hope is they, instead of going to a paranoid, bad, pessimistic side, that was hoping sometimes in the past, because of them too, because of them pretending to, that it was going to be over and that they were being busted, and that my dad was actually investigating this along with Tom, or they were working with an investigation team, which they should have a long time ago, perhaps due to the evidence from my YouTube channel, which my dad claims to see nothing on it. And again, Dad, the -0 videos, a lot of them, you're not going to see anything on it. You have to slow it down to see what I see in the walls, to see what I see sometimes, even there's videos where it's not slowed. But in dim light, sometimes it is hard to get evidence, and that's when a lot of this stuff happens. Even in daylight, I've got videos on there where there's colors dancing all over my walls. Whether or not you can make out crude, animated, what appears to be animated things, or maybe that's just my brain in some cases, like trying to make sense of what is on my walls. That shouldn't be happening on my walls. It shouldn't look like that at all. The thing of the mirror, or not the mirror, but the art print in the wall that's constantly played with every time I open my door, it's right there, and they're constantly changing things in that. Look at the video of that. You can see things moving in it, even if it's a squiggly, or maybe it's a result of the shocking that they're doing to me, and that it shouldn't look that way. This shouldn't normally look like that. Where you see back there, if you slow that down, see, that shouldn't look like that. You see this now? It looks a little different now. I'm just saying, maybe that's a result of the shocking, and that's like, maybe that's the beams that are shocking me, and that's just like, maybe they're not animations. Maybe it's just that's what you're seeing, since they're shocking me all the time. That's just a result of that. I don't think so, but that could be the case. I'm not saying that they're necessarily animated cartoons on the walls. It just appears that way sometimes with the different colors and the different shapes. And I think you can make it out in some of the videos. And even if you can't make out the content, my eyes saw that. So it's not camera noise. I know that it can appear as camera noise in non-slow down videos, especially when there's dim light in it. But cameras in this day and age aren't that bad. It might be grainy, but it shouldn't be that bad to make out. Even in some of the day ones, you can see that art print has been severely like, and there's like, and the other colors over it. I even have a YouTube video where you can see in the thumbnail, you'll see that has, you'll see like what it normally looks like in normal daylight without bullshit, and in the same period of time, like same type of time of day, you'll see like what it looked like that day. And I even have an arrow like that now looks like that in the day when this bullshit's going on. That shows you the difference in bright daylight in a hallway when there's a front door with a window in it. That shows you right there that something is going on around me, and that I took a picture one day in good light when it wasn't, everything fucked up, and shows you what it should look like normally to me, and did at that time. And then I showed you a picture of what it looked like another time, and have a video of that. And that's why I'm taking video. It's not like I go take a video of a wall or ceiling. I don't want to take any of these videos. I don't want to waste my time doing this. I have spent so much time trying to record this shit because it's something I saw and something I started noticing. And the first time I noticed it, I noticed this. When I look up there, I can see that with my eyes unaided when I look back there. It doesn't look quite this like TV static sort of or colorful, but I definitely noticed something there. And I noticed something in here too. It was worse in the corners because in dim light you can notice it more. Even on the walls, like in this wall right here. Do you see how it kind of looks fuzzy or like TV static like this? And it looks kind of yellow and blue in the video. On the wall, I kind of see that. It doesn't look as colorful as the yellow, but I see this motion. I see that. It doesn't pop out as much to my eyeballs. So the camera actually sometimes helps, and so does enhancing this. Walls shouldn't look like this, not to the unaided eye. I noticed this over 2 years ago at the extended stay and then at Studio 6. I was like, there's something going on with my eyes, like even in daylight, but especially when it gets darker and the condensate lights are on or the fluorescent lights are on. I was like, it almost looks like it's out of focus. Almost like if you have one contact. I used to have contacts, but now I had LASIK surgery. It's almost like you have one contact in and then one contact out. So you see it clearly, but then it looks blurry at the same time. It kind of looks out of focus, but I can see it. But then it looks like it's out of focus. So it sort of looks like there's something. So that's why it looks like this, because sometimes this stuff, it's not literally a projection on the wall. Sometimes it's that little squiggly stuff, like the little, almost purely transparent. And again, I'm not crazy because you can see this right here. This is not camera noise. I can see, look behind, and I can see it with my eyes. It doesn't look exactly like this, but there's something there. It looks like this, but it's not as noticeable. And I didn't notice it at first for the longest time. And even in older videos of my house, I see pictures of this crap on the walls. And I'm like, oh, I didn't notice that. There were a few months, or there was quite a while where I didn't notice that. Or it's a projection or whatever on my screen or between the screen and my eyeballs. And I'm like, I don't know if it's on the original picture or not. That's why I started taking picture of pictures and video of videos. Because sometimes when I did show it to a cop or a friend, they didn't see anything on there, and neither did I, or it didn't look as obvious to me. So I would be like, oh, that's weird. Like I totally had, my video looked like the trees were had animatronics in them, or that projections in them. Like I didn't think the tree was coming to life, obviously. But I was like, that happened at the Grove quite a bit, because the Grove, that was the first footage when I was taking video of stuff. And initially I didn't know, I was trying to find them. Those are the only videos where really when I'm looking up in the sky, but in the Manor ones, where I'm literally pointing the camera up there to try to see if I can find a drone or something, or a person in a tree or hanging out there from afar or whatever later. Or that, I don't typically point the camera and like hope for the best and then make out images like people imagining things in clouds. That's not what's happening. I see something with my eyes that doesn't make sense or is evidence of this, and then I point the camera at it to try to capture it as best as possible. And it always captures it. It doesn't always capture it exactly. A lot of times it captures it slightly more colorful because Samsungs are they have more of a saturation to them, which I kind of like, but they're more sensitive to that. So there's that aspect to it. And sometimes they capture more of it, and they're more than I see. And that's kind of a good thing, but sometimes it's a bad thing in the sense of there's more garbage or noise in there, so you can't really make out sometimes what I actually saw. It comes out as something different, but you still see something there. And that's what's very important about this. And what's also important about this is that when you look at the videos, especially when the ones I say look like animations, like when I zoom out of them, like the one was the blue squirrely thing, the blue ones, and look at the animations playlist. You will see, like when I zoom out, it becomes like an animations of, or like things with colors. They make up little, like, you zoom out a little bit and they look like little characters or whatever. And then like they start reacting, and some of them they look like they're swirling. So there's the same patterns. You'll see the swirling ones. That's a common one. They're swirling. All of a sudden they start looking like they're people dancing in a ring, or square dancing, or in a ring dancing, like swinging each other around. And they're swirling. Ooh, and it turns into something else. And then it looks like crickets hopping in like puddles, or it looks like water, or it looks like roaches. And I have examples of like a lot of those. Or it looks like some sort of bug or creature, like for real, like it looks like it'll turn into that. And that's very important because that's what it looks like. And whether or not that's what it is, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't be there. I shouldn't have swirling blue light on my ceiling or on my floor or on my walls. So whether or not you can make out the animations in those animated ones, especially the ones that look all blue and black, zoom out from those a little bit. Look at it in the dark. Keep staring at it, because I guarantee you that the longer I look at these videos, the easier it is to see them. Once you're in dark light for a while, your eyes begin to adjust. And like in this case right here, there's more than the ceiling color or wall color in there. I see on the video there looks kind of like pink. I noticed that when I was with Tim, he couldn't see, even though he saw 20/20 or whatever, or he claims that, he couldn't see the difference between certain colors. And part of that may be to the fact that I was looking at it longer. The more you stare at them, the more you're able to see the differences between things. The more likely it is you'll see the difference between a lime green and a green yellow, or like a yellow green versus a green yellow. But he had been looking at it for a while. And I'm like, you can't tell the difference between this color and this color. And I'm not pointing at this in particular. And he was like, no. And I'm like, So in some cases, it may be the fact that you can't, the colors, the different varying colors helps. But he was able to see the noise, and he's like, I know I see that, but he was having trouble grasping the fact that he wasn't there witnessing it while I saw it. And I'm like, I know that's how it works. They don't want there to be a witness, and they poke fun and take great pride in there being no one else around to witness it. And I'm like, even if Tim witnessed everything, I already have witnesses and other victims listed that have already given statements in writing and in person with the Travis County Sheriff's Department, and which APD has ignored, and which my dad and Tom ignore. So they already take great pride in that. And I keep telling them, what if Tim knows? And they take great pride in people's suffering. I know that doesn't make sense. I wouldn't do it either. But think of online trolls and online bullies. There have been people that bully people online knowingly, like with themselves knowing who they were as doing it, with logs of it, with other people taking logs of it and screenshots of it, without any sort of anonymity at all, directly on Facebook and directly on Twitter and Last.fm, and have bullied people to death, or bullying people into hurting themselves or killing themselves. And possibly what worries me about this is, like, these people threatened to Arlington Road me, which is basically make a patsy out of me during the time that the Austin bomber was here. Or not here, but when he was doing whatever he did and got caught shortly a few days after that. And they threatened me a few days before he got caught, and they said they were going to frame me for that. I don't know if that was intentional, if they would actually have done that or not. That's still a huge threat to make against someone that you're already terrorizing. And what's scary about this is they could. So I'm gonna make another video about the medical thing, but I think that's Tim calling. Hey, can I call you back in a minute? Hello? I think he's about dialing me. Let me see real quick. I know this video is really long. I have to make a separate video for the medical thing. But then the police, I guess to wrap it up, the police had taken me to the car. They had promised me to bring me my shoes, which they never had done. I was in shorts. I think I was in shorts or long thin pants, like workout pants, but not sweaty, not the sweatshirt kind, but like the ones I always feel like a windbreaker material. I think it was that, and then a t-shirt, and I think I had socks. I can't remember if I had socks on or not, but I didn't have shoes, and they promised me to give me mine, but they didn't, and I had asked them again, and he didn't. And I technically never had an interview or an exam done by the mental crisis team guy. I assume that was the fifth guy that showed up a little bit after them into my room. I'm not sure if that's the case. You know, I've often experienced like the two officers and then like the third guy that comes on as the mental health guy a few times. So I'm assuming that the fifth guy that showed up was that. However, he at least witnessed me say at least one time, if not more, I'm not thinking about hurting myself or anybody else. And aside from that, and I had done nothing wrong, in that my landlord / owner / roommate had taken the handle off my door and had punched a hammer through the door as well. And basically, that's an act of domestic violence in my eyes. In my viewpoint, I wouldn't have called the cops on him even then, but I would have looked for another. I was like, I'm gonna have to look for another place to stay because I can't trust Alan. And they've been constantly, I hate saying that, I know you hate hearing that, Dad, have been constantly trying to make me think that Alan was a bad person. But instead of being paranoid and thinking the worst of people, I was hoping, and I always assumed that he was a nice, good person, and I was hoping that he was actually, his actions were like doing this to do like a what would you do moment. I would have appreciated it not happening to begin with, and for me to be believed, and to not slowly take your time investigating this and being very careful as to not tip them off to it, because there's enough evidence with people that will go back. Like, just don't waste any time, and just let me know if you do believe me and are investigating it. I don't think that's the case now, but I was hopeful that was the case. And they tricked me a lot of times into making me think that, but then it got so ridiculous that I'm like, how could this not be the case? Why would you call the police on me? I was doing nothing wrong. Even after they left the first time, they're like, there's nothing to investigate here. He's not thinking about hurting himself. Why wouldn't you have a conversation with me? I was being quiet. You couldn't even hear me from your bedroom, even the first time when you said I was being loud and yelling, which I wasn't. I might have been talking loudly to myself or to them, but I've already expressed in the past, like, especially when I'm in pain a lot, when I'm being attacked, whether or not you believe that they're a neurological thing, a mental thing, or a real thing, I'm going to shout out in pain sometimes. Like, you wouldn't believe how much this sucks and how much it hurts sometimes, especially just it's like, again, if someone's poking you all day long and not stopping, even after you ask them to stop it nicely, you're going to blow up at them. I don't usually blow up except for like, every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks will go by without, and even then you can't, usually Alan doesn't even hear it or witness it. Because, sometimes he's been hanging around the bathroom more, my room more, and then like that can echo more when he's in the kitchen. But again, it's not threatening to him. And again, I usually say, I'm sorry, but it will happen. I've told him that. And that's the worst that you can complain about with me. And yet you still call the police and you still treat me like that. And the police still do something. Like, the police should have done nothing. The police shouldn't have even responded to it the second time. The first set of police officers did the right thing. And I didn't even open the door to them. And I was kind of concerned I probably should have opened the door to them, but I didn't. And I was so fed up. And I'm like, I'm not thinking about hurting myself or anybody else. Please leave me alone. I just want to go to bed. I didn't do anything wrong. And then Alan takes a hammer to the door, and then they ignore that. I'm like, they didn't even explain to me why I was being taken in. They didn't explain to me why they were there talking to me. They didn't explain anything to me. They just wanted to grab me, to go with them, and I didn't want to go with them. I already told them, talk to him. I don't I'm not doing anything wrong. That they couldn't plant drugs on me that time because I guess the cameras would see. I mean, it's a home thing, so I guess. But in the car thing, in the slow speed car chase, from before when I got arrested in September of 2017, like they planted drugs on me to make it look like that's why I was evading. No, you were screwing with me in the hotel room. If I had drugs on me, I didn't want to do any drugs. That's why I didn't call a dealer to give me drugs. But if I had any drugs on me, I would have reluctantly taken them because that's what they like to do. They they know that calms me, or that puts me in the mood where, I just want to jerk off in bed, or I'll clean, or I'll be more quiet because it puts me in a better mood. I've never had a bad reaction to anything except it makes me hornier, hungrier, happier, more lovey, more huggy, more whatever, more interested in like playing a video game or whatever. That's what it does. I've never had paranoia. I've never been a picker. I've never been anything else. And I say that because they know that, and they have literally over time intentionally increased the physical attacks and the physical pain, and told me that it was going to increase and that they would only decrease it or stop it if I did do like meth to calm me down and to condition me to that. And then in some cases, 2 or 3 days later, and again, it wasn't 2 or 3 days of doing it. I mean, I would do it a little bit, that would be it. And then I would sleep, I would eat. This isn't like a marathon of doing it. This isn't a large amount of doing it. This is just a coping thing and also a coerced thing. And then they would, 2 or 3 days later, because it's still technically in my system and would show up on a piss test, they would do this kind of bullshit, get an incident call where the police forcibly sedated me or took me to be forcibly sedated or arrested me, because it would show up in my system. And then and since they don't do levels, which hospitals should do levels when you do drugs, you should test for the levels in them too, because that's very important to understand. Because they don't do that, that's a problem, and they'll show positive, and then you can blame that. You can use that to blame on the victim's behavior. So that's very important to look into. But they took me in, and again, I also told them that Max was my registered emotional support animal, which he is, and they did not get him. I told them twice. They did not bring him in there. If you're really concerned about my emotional state, you should keep me with my emotional support animal and not traumatize him and separate me from him. I'll do a video on the hospital later.